Appreciate that. How we all doing today?
Good.
We all good? A little bit. It's hot, I know, but you're here, and I'm glad. If I've not met you yet, my name is Scott, and I'm one of the pastors here. And here we are, right? We are here, October 30th, big day tomorrow, Halloween. I see some of you guys wear your costumes to church today. Way to go. Just kidding. Listen up a little bit, y'all. Let's hear it down. We're going to have some fun. All righty. So, yes, we're closing up this Fearless series today. Have you guys enjoyed this series at all?
Yes.
Right? It's been good. I am excited for where we're going today, right? But before we get to that, let me just kind of bait you a little bit. So as I said, we're closing up this 3-week Fearless series today. So we've kind of journeyed through really several key characters in the Word of God and just kind of challenge ourselves to step up and stand fearless. And today we're going to talk about some more folks. But next week, right? Next week, I tell you guys this all the time, and I'm not going to stop telling you until literally every person in the greater Phoenix area knows Jesus, and good luck with that, right? But here's the thing, right? Next week, we are starting a brand new series called Response versus Reality, and I'm incredibly just excited and ready for what God is going to do in those next 3 weeks. So I just challenge you to get out there, invite your neighbors, invite your coworkers, invite the stranger at the grocery store that you're standing in front of. I mean, just make sure that you are here, because I know it and you know it. Sometimes when it comes to our faith, when it comes to our view of God and who He is and who He can be to us, sometimes there's a little bit of a gap between our response to Him and the reality that we find ourselves in. And so over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be addressing that gap and what that looks like for you and me in 2016 to be able to figure out how we can truly respond to God and the reality that we find ourselves in when it comes to who He is and who He can be to us. So again, invest, invite, grab a bunch of cards in your seat back pockets, but you want to be here for this, and nobody should miss the next 3 weeks. It's going to be incredible. Alrighty, here's the thing. If you have not been here, we've been having some fun every kind of Sunday morning, rolling through some people's insane but legitimate fears. And so this is the final installment, so we have 5 more actual fears, right? Like phobias that people in our world have. And so I'm going to have an Angel, because my notes are all messed up right here. I don't remember what order I put them in. But Angel, go ahead and throw that first one up, all right? So the first one, we have phronomophobia. All right? Phronomophobia, this is a real thing, and I think that there are some people potentially in here that have this, right? Or maybe it's that one family member. Ever have that one family member who's just a little bit weird? Yeah? Now, if you're not raising your hands, just so you know you are that weird family member. I'm the member. I completely understand that this morning. Amen. Right? The phronomophobia, because sometimes people just aren't quite all there, right? They have phronomophobia. They have a fear of thinking. Fear of thinking. You know, and you have a family member that has that, or a loved one that you just think, bless their heart, right? Like just, you love them and they just don't think very well, right? Maybe they have that, the fear of thinking. What's the next one? The next one is this one. Next one, there it is. Phobophobia. Phobophobia. This is hardcore, right? This is fear of developing a phobia. How does it even work, right? Like, you just live your life literally scared of everything. Like, that's just how you work. Like, just break it to you. Like, you're just afraid of potentially being afraid. I'm afraid you're already afraid of being afraid. Right, there you go. How's that grab you? Next one is this. Arachnotibutorophobia. Arachnotibutorophobia. I practice these in my office legitimately out loud. I still cannot grab a hold of this one. Arachnotibutorophobia, right? This is plaguing our nation, folks. Plaguing our nation. This is fear of peanut butter, wait,
and chocolate
sticking to the roof of your mouth. It's terrifying. I get it, right? I get it. Especially Halloween around here. It's a bad thing. Anyone have that, right? I will take your Reese's peanut butter cups because they'll stick to the roof of your mouth like no one's business. This one. All right. Anglophobia. Anglophobia. This is fear of Englishness. That's a word, right? On the internet. It's a word. Englishness, right? Like, that's just a little too British for me today. You know, like, it's just a little too much. Right, here's the next one. Anatidophobia. Anatidophobia. This is a real one because it has that AE combo that you're just not quite sure how it ever truly works. So that just may be me, right? Anatidophobia is this: fear of being watched by a duck. Fear of being watched by a duck. Now this one I completely understand, because one, you have no idea what ducks are thinking. Secondly, like, how sharp are their actual bills, right? Like, you don't really know until you truly question Affleck for what they got going on with that duck, right? But can I tell you that lately I've come to the unappreciation of Scottsdale, right? I love Scottsdale. I have fallen in love with this place very quickly. But golly, one of the things in the world I hate most are Canadian geese, and those things are everywhere around here. That is the nastiest creature on earth. All right, you heard it here first. Those Canadian geese. I would hit them with my car. I don't even care. They're terrible. They're awful, right? But that's just what it is, right? The fear of being watched by a duck. So watch your back, folks. You never know what you're going to get when you cross paths with a duck. All right, so here's been our verse for this entire series, this Fearless series. It is 2 Timothy 1:7. All right, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have some group participation here. I want us to read it out loud together, right? So get your best voice going. And here's what it says: For God did not give us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. Now, none of you believe anything that you just said. Let's try it one more time. For God did not give us a spirit of fear and timidity, but a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline. I'll give you like a C- on that one. That's okay. We'll get there again, right? But here's the thing. Get out your bulletins. Get out your Bibles, because this morning, as I already shared, the past couple weeks, we've been journeying through some really important people in Scripture. And the first week we talked about Gideon, who was a guy that a lot of us hadn't really known about, right? And we talked about Gideon and how he stood fearless, and he defeated like 200,000 soldiers with just 300 men who literally just played musical instruments, right? That's all they did, and God came through and did amazing things. And then last week, if you were here, we talked about a guy that has a strict 3 verses that tell his story. That's it. That's all this guy gets. His name's Benaiah, right? And he chased a lion down into a pit on a snowy day, and he killed that lion. It's crazy, right? It's nuts. But that's what we read about, these people who are standing fearless. This morning, we're not going to be talking about one particular individual. We actually have 3. And the 3 gentlemen that we're going to be looking on today, quite honestly, church, these guys came face to face with a situation. They came face to face with a circumstance that's something that is one of the most fearful things that you and I would ever even imagine. These guys' names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And if you do not know the background on these guys, I am glad that you are here, because these dudes have a story to tell. Let me give you some background on these fellas. So basically, in order to get to where we're going to talk about today, let me have you understand the background. So basically, the nation of Babylon, right? The nation of Babylon was under the leadership, under the rule of a guy named King Nebuchadnezzar. And what we read is that he went out and he attacked and conquered Judah. Now, for you and I, for our purposes this morning, let's just kind of call Judah Israel. It's the same thing. I'm not going to kind of give you the history of all that, right? You can look at that later. But basically what happened is Nebuchadnezzar, he went in there and basically almost annihilated the nation. And so he basically went in there, and his soldiers went in, just cleaned everything out, attacked them, and basically he said, what I want you guys to do now is I want you to go in there. Go into the nation of Judah, go into the nation of Israel, and I want you to find me the best educated. I want you to find me the smartest. I want you to find me the best looking. Basically what he's saying is that I want you soldiers to go in and find the Israelites who were born of a noble birth. And what's going to happen is we're going to take all those ones, those top-notch, high-quality people, and we're going to take those ones with the brightest futures, and we're going to bring them back to Babylon with us, and we're going to train them. And really what you have to know what he means by train. He means brainwash. So we're going to train them, we're going to brainwash them, and what we're going to do is we're going to tell them all about our culture. We're going to feed them our food. We're going to teach them our language. We're going to show them our history. In fact, we're not even going to let them worship their God. Instead, We're going to completely try to rid their minds 100% of their God, and we're going to teach them about our gods. We're going to teach them all about the ins and the outs and the do's and the don'ts of these Babylonian gods. Basically, King Nebuchadnezzar is telling his soldiers, look, go out there because I want you to take the best of Israel and make them the best of Babylon. And so the three guys that we're talking about today, folks, they were just little boys when they were captured, kidnapped, abducted, and taken to Babylon. And what we actually read is that the very first thing, church, the very first thing upon arriving back in Babylon that happened to these three boys was boom. It's like they walked in a line and they got a brand new name. They changed their names. They were given this new name. See, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the names that we know them as, were not their actually given birth names. Because their birth names were related to God Almighty, the God of the Bible, the God of Israel. But now, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their new names were related to the Babylonian gods. So in that small exchange, it's basically as if the Babylonians were saying, look, boys, anytime we call you by name, we want you to think of our gods, not yours. We want you to think of the Babylonian gods instead of your God. And church, isn't that the way that Satan works? I mean, come on, like God wants you and I to hear, you and I to believe, you and I to understand what God himself says about us, who and what he has created us to be and do. But Satan, on the other hand, just wants us to hear what Satan thinks about us. And church, I guarantee that you can relate. I guarantee you that you can relate because maybe for as long as you can remember, maybe for you, all your life, you've heard some lies said about yourself, and you've just started to believe them. You start to believe things like, oh, you'll never amount to anything. You're worthless. You're not good enough. You're pathetic. You're too far gone. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what happens, no matter how hard you try, just throw in the towel because your life just won't count. Church, it's almost as if we've heard these things over and over again that we just start to believe them as truth. So the Babylonian leader said, okay, let's make that happen. Let's begin to ingrain in them our gods, and let's call them by our gods, and maybe, just maybe, they'll start to believe that our gods are the real gods. So if you have your Bible, open up to Daniel chapter 3. The book of Daniel is in the Old Testament, kind of towards the end. Daniel chapter 3 is where we are going to start. And as you're turning there, let me give you a little bit more background here. Where we're going to find ourselves is basically King Nebuchadnezzar had built this gold statue. It was this idol, and quite honestly, this thing was just gigantic, all right? I mean, this thing was literally huge. And he goes out there and he tells everybody in the land, he literally gathers everyone together in the courtyard, and he has his messenger guy, goes out there and basically calls out this decree, and he says, look, people of Babylon, you need to worship this idol. You need to bow down to this idol, and if you don't, we're tossing you into this blazing furnace over here. So imagine that for a second, right? I mean, let's go back to this idol. I mean, we've got to talk about this idol just for a moment, right? The Bible says this idol was 90 feet tall. That's like 9 stories tall, all right? And 9 feet wide. This thing was just enormous. It's huge. Now, I don't know if maybe he was compensated for something. I don't know. You know how it is. Big man, little truck, big idol, whatever. I don't know what's happening there, but we're going to dive into the story right here. So just imagine that there's a courtyard literally packed full of people. And this is what comes out in Daniel 3, verses 4 through 6. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, nations and peoples of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. Verse 5, as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, or the flute, or the zither, or the lyre, or the harp, or pipe, and all kinds of music, basically anytime you hear any song, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not, get this, church, whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately, no questions asked, no hesitation, I added that part, right? Immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Church, open up your notes for a second. Here's the key thought for this morning. Here's the key principle that I want you guys to understand, to believe, to know. It's this: a faith that is tested by fire is a faith that can be trusted. A faith that is tested by fire is a faith that can be trusted. So let me ask you this. Church, can your faith be trusted? Now notice my choice of wordage there, right? Can your faith be trusted? I'm not talking about your parents' faith. I'm not talking about your friend's faith, or your family member's faith, or your spouse's faith. I'm not talking about my faith. I'm asking you, can your faith be trusted? Because quite honestly, church, for a lot of people, their faith cannot be trusted. Can your faith be trusted? I mean, could your faith as a person, as an individual, wherever you stand with Jesus, could your faith stand and handle the fiery trial of unanswered prayer? Church, could your faith handle the fiery trial of some sort of personal loss, whether that's a loss of possessions or a loss of relationship? Church, could your faith, could it handle the fiery trial when you are standing face to face with the consequences of just your straight up poor choices? The question has to be asked, can your faith handle those kinds of trials? Because honestly, for a lot of people, church, their faith can't. Back to these three gentlemen. I mean, just imagine this just for a second, right? I mean, think for a minute about the situation that these guys find themselves in. They were just young men, like late teens. I mean, honestly, like any other college student like them. I mean, these guys, they had dreams. They had hopes. They had a future in front of them. They had big plans. Not a single one of them had this death wish. They wanted to live. They wanted to make a difference. Church, these guys, they knew their purpose. They wanted to make a difference to the people of Babylon, and all of a sudden, seemingly without warning, almost out of nowhere, comes this law, this decree, where they're faced with this unbelievable choice. All you have to do is bow down. That's it. I mean, all you have to do is bow down. Just this once, just like every other person around you. Just bow down, just worship this idol, then everything's cool. You're free, you're clear, you're good to go. But if you don't bow down, if you don't do this one thing, guess what? It's game over. Don't pass go, don't collect $200, it's done. Okay? Done. You're dead. You're burned alive. Church, what in the world do you do? I know for me, gosh, my mind immediately, I mean, I'm talking boom, immediately goes to rationalizing, compromising. I mean, for me, I can stand up here today and I can easily rattle off the list to you as to all the reasons why, if I was in that situation, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if I was back then, if I was in their shoes, I can give you a long laundry list as to all the reasons why it'd probably be just a really good idea for me to follow suit. Just for me to go ahead and bow down. I mean, for me, I think things like, okay, well, like, I'm here for a reason. God has me here for a purpose in Babylon. I'm supposed to make a difference to these people. I want to expose them to the one true God. And if I'm dead, I can't really do that. Or how about what if I bow down when everyone else does it? The music goes off, they bow down, I bow down with them, but while they're praying to the idol, they're worshiping the idol, I'm like worshiping the one true God. Or what about this? What if I just bow down like super fast, like, whoo, worship done, right? Like, what if I just do that? Then I can check it off my list. I'll still be alive. I can ask God to forgive me, and guess what? God will. Church, I don't know about you, but for me, in my mind, it's so easy to start sliding towards rationalization. But here's the problem with rationalization. You rationalize once, we can rationalize twice, and 3 times, and so on and so forth. And before long, we're just simply living a life of compromise. Church, we're living a life of compromise. So now the question has to be asked as we look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as we look at their situation and their circumstance, we have to ask the question, so what do you do? What do we do? What can we learn from these guys? I mean, in 2016, what in the world do we do when our faith is tested by fire? What do we do when our faith is tested by fire? Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they teach us 3 things. Church, 3 things. The first one is this. We must always obey God's commands instead of man's expectations. We must always obey God's commands instead of man's expectations. While you're writing that down, let me read verse 16 to you. It says this, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you." You sense that kind of combative nature in their voice? "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves before you." In other words, what they're saying is, Nebuchadnezzar, guess what? Our mind is already made up. Long before that fire ever existed, long before you ever struck that first match, Nebuchadnezzar, they already had a plan. You might say, well, how do you know that? What was their plan? Well, church, their plan was obedience. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew long before this issue ever presented itself, they had planned to obey God.
Amen.
Notice something. See, notice what they didn't do. Notice when King Nebuchadnezzar fired back at them to say, you better bow down. Notice that what you'll read, we didn't cover this part, when the soldiers went out and realized that 3 of the men weren't bowing down like everyone else, when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were standing tall while everyone else is down, notice that when he called them out, they said nothing like, hey, Nebi, can you hold on just a second? Like, can we talk about this for a second? Guys, let's huddle up. Let's figure out the pros and cons. Hey, you got some papyrus for us to write a list down? Like, they didn't say any of that. What we read, church, is that they fired back immediately. Church, and they said, we don't have anything to talk about. King, we don't have to talk about this. We heard what you're going to do to us. And we know exactly what we're going to do. We've made up our minds. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you would see. It doesn't matter what you do. King, we have a plan. And these guys' plan all along was to obey God. See, church, here's what I know. Those of you right now in this room, those of you on the other side of that camera watching this online, who just may be facing an easy way out of your current situation, a rationalization, a compromise. And maybe for you, you think, oh, it's just this once. Like it's just this once, I'm going to sacrifice my belief. It's just this once, I'm going to push my faith to the side just for a moment. It's not that big of a deal. God will understand and God will forgive me. Those of you right now who may be thinking it, maybe in not those terms, but you're thinking about it, you're towing the line. Once again, church, we compromise once, we compromise twice. And before long, our lives are just made up of compromises. Church, we must obey God. Now, here's the second thing. The second thing that you and I do when our faith is tested by fire is this. We are going to learn to believe God's truth instead of just the facts. Let me say that again because I said it correctly. We're going to learn to believe God's truth instead of the facts. Some of you are saying, hold on, like you've gone crazy a little bit. What's the difference, right? Church, there is a difference. Let me unpack this for you because these two things are wildly different. Facts versus God's truth. They are different as night and day. Verse 17, Daniel 3:17 says this. Again, they're still talking. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. Church, I want you to notice two huge words in their statement. The God who we serve. We serve. Church, right there, they reference it. They talked about the God they serve, not a God that they've heard about. Not a God that they've spoken to, not a God that they read about, the God they were grown up being told about. No, they said the God that we serve, the God we know, the God that we've been in fellowship with, the God who we've trusted, the God who's been faithful, the God who we know firsthand. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fire back to the king of Babylon and say, look, King Nebuchadnezzar, the God who we serve is able to rescue us from your power. Church, that right there is the difference between believing just the facts and believing the truth of God. Let me recap. Think about this, right? What were some of the facts of the story that we just read? Well, first of all, the king said, bow down. That's a fact. They didn't do it. Fact. The king hacked off. Fact. He's also building a huge bonfire. That's a fact. His fire, like your fire and my fire, like really any fire, is pretty much hot. That's a fact. Everybody, I'm talking every single person to be thrown into the fire turned to s'mores. Fact. The king was ready, about to throw these three guys in. Fact. They responded, our God will deliver us, church. That is truth. Are you starting to see the difference a little bit? See, we don't just believe the facts, church. You and I, we believe the truth. And you may say, well, Scott, it's kind of a one-time thing. It's kind of one and done right there. No, this is all over Scripture. Truly, it plays out everywhere. How about this fact? It's humanly impossible to walk on water. Truth? Jesus Christ did it. How about the fact that when someone is dead, church, they're dead. The truth is that Jesus Christ didn't stay dead. And when Jesus Christ spoke to other dead people, they didn't stay dead either. See, church, maybe you sit there today and the fact is that the doctor says that there's no hope. The truth is Jesus Christ is the great physician.
Amen.
Church, the fact may be is that your family isn't sure how they're going to pay the bills. The truth is Jesus Christ is your provider.
Amen.
The fact may be is that your marriage is in big, big trouble. Church, the truth is God is a God of restoration. Church, the fact may be is that you face an impossible situation and you have absolutely no idea what to do. The truth is all things are possible with God. The fact may be is that you sit there today and you have never felt further from God. You've never felt more alone. You don't even know where He is, church. The truth is right now, in this moment, as you start thinking about your facts, is that God Almighty is pursuing you right now.
That's the God we serve.
Church, the fact may be is that you just feel like the biggest letdown. You feel like the biggest screw up and you can never get another chance in life because quite honestly, you feel like you just don't deserve it. Church, the truth is God is ready for you right now. Church, I want you to think about your facts. Think about your facts. And then know that the truth of the matter is that He, God, is working together in all things, church. I mean all things. For the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose, church. You and I, we don't just believe the facts, we believe what God says. We don't just believe the facts, we believe the truth. Third thing is this: we believe God. We believe God. Now, I'm not saying that we believe in God. That's not what's on the screen right now. We believe God. I'm saying that we actually believe Him. I mean, does He affect your life every other day of the week? Does He affect your life when you walk out these doors? Does He affect the decisions that you make and the relationships that you start and the way that you spend your money and the way that you spend your time and the words that you say? Because, church, these three young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, church, they believed God so much that they put it all on the line. That's your Bibles. After they almost combat King Nebuchadnezzar to say, like, our God's going to rescue us. He can take away your power. His power is bigger. After they say that God is able to rescue them, look at what they say next in verse 18. But even if He doesn't. Wow. Even if He doesn't rescue us, we want to make it clear to you, Your Majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship this gold statue that you have set up. Church, right there, holy cow, that is faith on steroids. That's called faith. Church, that's called faith no matter what. No matter what, if my colleagues mock me. Church, no matter what, if a family member walks away from me. No matter what, if I lose everything that I worked for. No matter what, if I'm so alone and I don't know what's going to happen and I'm afraid and the world is getting darker. No matter what. Church, it's faith no matter what. No matter what, I will still worship Him. Because He is still God. No matter what I feel, no matter what I see, no matter what happens to me, no matter what's going on around me, I live by faith. I stand fearless. I will worship Him no matter what. Back to these three guys. Nebuchadnezzar's like, fine. Have it your way, boys. Fair enough. I'm going to follow through. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to make an example out of you guys. In fact, see this fire that's already blazing hot? We're going to turn it up. And we're going to turn it up 7 times the heat. And so he does that. And he goes out there and he finds the strongest guards. And he tells these guards to tie up in the most craziest knots that you could ever believe, to tie these 3 men up, right? Like Boy Scouts on HGH. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, church, they were tossed into the fire. The Bible actually says that the heat, church, the heat, 7 times the heat. That heat was so intense that those soldiers who threw in those 3 guys, they died just from the heat of the moment, just because they went close to the fire. Those 3 guards, boom, gone, dead. It killed the guards immediately, but it didn't kill Shadrach. It didn't kill Meshach, church. It didn't even kill Abednego. Back to your Bibles, verse 24. After all this goes down, what we actually see is Nebuchadnezzar looking into the flames, and the king Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw in the fire? And they replied, certainly, your majesty. He said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound, meaning untied, unharmed. And the fourth guy looks like a son of the gods. Maybe your translation says the 4th one looks like the Son of God. You see, we may never, church, we may never, ever really know just how good the presence of God truly is until you find yourself smack dab in the middle of the fire. I imagine these 3 were walking around and they're saying, like, I thought it was just us. I thought it was just us, but there's somebody else in here with us. I know the fire is hot. I know that this is my worst nightmare, but somehow we're not getting burned. Church, I'm so vocal. I always say that I don't know your circumstances. Church, Church, as you sit out there today, I don't want to claim for a second to know your facts. But I do know. Church, I know that whatever comes your way, we have to know, we have to believe that God in and of himself is more than enough. Because that's a faith that's tested by fire. That's a faith that can be trusted. That's a faith no matter what. It's you and I realizing that sometimes we really only experience the goodness of God in the most intimate and powerful ways when we're smack dab in the middle of fire. Church, no matter what may come, press on. Because he will never leave you. He will never forsake you. We've heard it here this morning. He has not given you a spirit of fear, but instead he's given you a spirit of power and love and self-discipline. So church, today, stand fearless. No matter what. Believe God. And get ready. Because you will see and get to know a whole new side of him that you've never seen before. In a moment, I'm going to pray. And as Pastor Ryan and the team, as they continue to play, as they continue to sing, I simply just want to, once again, just remind you, the altar's open. If you need to come and pray, do it. If you need to sit and reflect, do it. If you need to stand to your feet and belt out in great harmony or terrible harmony, do it. Stand fearless, church. Once again, I don't know your circumstance. I don't know your facts. But I do know that we have to stand in the truth and not just believe what we see, not just believe what we feel, but believe what God Almighty says. Church, today, believe God. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this moment right here. And as some of us here, Lord, we're just rolling through our facts. As some of us here may be staring rationalization or compromise in the face. God, as some of us here are simply surrounded by flames, would you right now in this moment remind us of the truth that you are God. Always have been, always will be. Lord, this morning may we experience you in a way that we've never experienced you before. May we press on, fight through it, God. May we believe what you say, believe who you are, so we can stand in your truth, God, and stand fearless. God, you deserve all the honor. You deserve all the praise. God, you deserve our worship. You deserve our heart. And right now in this moment, Lord, we give those things to you. So you're in the crowd.